The rain had stopped, but no one moved. We stood in silence around a polished casket, lowered carefully into the family plot like it was just another box in a vault. My grandfather, Lionel Wexley, was the kind of man who made people whisper even when he wasn't in the room. And now, even buried, he still commanded that silence. The black umbrellas felt less like protection from the weather and more like shields from what we didn't want to face. The fact that Lionel had always known more than he said, and probably planned something we hadn't seen coming. My name is Simon. I'm 28, and until last week, I didn't expect to inherit anything but stories. My older cousins were the golden ones, prepped, suited, and already fighting over who would take over the Wexley name in finance, real estate, or politics. I was the outlier, the grandson who wrote screenplays, the creative disappointment they let sit in the back row at holidays. Still, I was there that day, quiet, present, when the family lawyer, Mr. Halberd, asked everyone to meet at the estate 1 hour after the burial. There was a message to be delivered. Everyone assumed it was a final reading of the will, but what waited in that mahogany-paneled study was a flat screen, a remote, and a USB drive. Not papers, not signatures, a video. The room filled with murmurs. Aunt Catherine rolled her eyes. Uncle Miles whispered something to his assistant, and then the screen flickered to life. There he was. Lionel, sitting in his leather chair, hands folded, eyes sharp. He wore the navy blue sweater he always saved for rainy Sundays. A glass of scotch rested beside him, half full, untouched. He spoke with no introduction. "If you're watching this," he said, "I'm dead, but more importantly, so is the version of this family that I enabled." No one breathed. Lionel continued. "This is not a will, it's a reckoning. I've written my final testament elsewhere, in legally binding form. What you're about to hear is the truth I never spoke while I was alive." Aunt Catherine gasped. Uncle Miles muttered, "This is absurd," but no one stopped the video. My grandfather leaned forward slightly, eyes piercing the lens. "You all spent decades circling me like vultures, forgetting that I wasn't just a wallet with a heartbeat, and I let it happen. I built this empire with blood and brilliance, but I neglected something greater than any estate, legacy of soul." I felt the tension ripple through the room like an aftershock. You will hear things you don't want to, about yourselves, about me, and about what you thought you were entitled to. He raised the glass, didn't drink. "I'm not giving you a fortune," he said. "I'm giving you a choice." Then the screen cut to black. A single line appeared in white text. "Return here tomorrow, alone." One by one, the family stormed out, some fuming, some pretending not to care. I stayed behind, staring at the dark screen. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, he had left something for me after all. Something different. Not a company, not a title. Maybe a story worth living. The next morning, I returned alone. The estate felt different without the crowd, like the house itself had been holding its breath. I walked through the ivy-covered gates, past the marble statues and whispering pines, and entered the study where the video had been played. The screen was already on. This time, no chairs were set up, no refreshments, just the same USB drive blinking softly from the port. I pressed play. Lionel appeared again. Same sweater, same scotch, his voice quieter this time. Not for drama, for honesty. "You came back," he said. "Then you're not here for what you expected. Good." He paused, breathing in like the weight of the next sentence had taken him years to prepare. "I lied to all of you." I blinked. For years, I said the ring was lost, the family ring passed down for generations, the one your grandmother wore, the one your mother cried over when it vanished. I told you it was stolen. He looked away. Shame bloomed across his expression. "I sold it, quietly. During a moment of weakness I never confessed. Not for money, but to destroy a memory I couldn't carry anymore." He leaned back in the chair. "It wasn't just a ring, it was the symbol of the last thing I ever did for love, and the first thing I destroyed for power." I felt the air leave my lungs. Lionel wasn't the kind of man who admitted weakness. He was a figurehead, a statue made of ambition. And yet here he was, unraveling himself before me. He looked into the camera again. "That ring is no longer gone. It's hidden. And if you're the one who found this message alone, I left you the map." There was a pause. "Not to recover it," he said, "but to understand what it cost." Then on the desk beside me, I noticed a sealed envelope I hadn't seen yesterday. It had my name. Inside, a key, a worn piece of paper with an address and one sentence in his handwriting. To understand the weight of wealth, carry what I couldn't. I held the key, unsure whether it opened a drawer or a door or something deeper. But I knew one thing, this wasn't a game, it was a confession, and I had been chosen to hear it. The address led me to a part of town we never spoke of, not out of shame, but irrelevance. It wasn't on the family brochures, not on charity event routes or investment portfolios. It was a forgotten street behind an abandoned railway line. Rusted fences, faded graffiti, a place where the Bellamy name held no weight. I followed the note to a locksmith's shop, long shuttered. The sign was cracked, and the display window was layered with dust, but the door opened with the key my grandfather left. Inside, I was hit with a wave of memory, the smell of old wood, tobacco, and something else, time. Everything inside had been frozen, untouched. On the back wall, behind layers of newspaper clippings and black and white photos, there was a drawer. I opened it slowly. Inside, a small wooden box wrapped in velvet, and inside the box, the ring, the family ring. Gold, thick, with the lion crest carved into the band, our symbol. The same ring my grandmother wore in every photo. The ring my mother stopped talking about after Lionel said it had been taken. It was heavier than I expected. Beneath it was another note, handwritten. You were always the one watching, not speaking, not pretending. If you found this, then maybe one day you'll do better than I did. I sat on the cracked leather chair by the door, and for the first time in years, I wept. Not because of the inheritance, not because of the ring, because someone I thought never saw me had. This wasn't about money or legacy, it was about truth. My grandfather had built an empire but hid his guilt inside a lockbox on a forgotten street, and now that truth was mine to carry, not to sell, not to parade, but to protect. We buried my grandfather under gray skies with umbrellas held more for performance than necessity. The chapel was filled with faces I didn't recognize, politicians, investors, socialites, people who smiled in curated grief, who whispered in corridors, not out of mourning, but strategy. I sat near the back, not out of humility, but distance. Lionel stood at the altar, delivering a eulogy he didn't write. He spoke of empire, discipline, uncompromising standards. Not a word about warmth, not a word about the ring. My mother dabbed dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. None of them knew what I now held. In my coat pocket, the weight of that ring was heavier than any sermon. My fingers curled around it like it might vanish if I let go. I kept hearing his voice from the video. That line, "Some things should never be inherited." What did that mean? After the service, Lionel pulled me aside. His voice was low, practiced. "Listen, about that video," he began, glancing around. "We should let it rest. It's not the memory he would have wanted." I looked at him. "Or not the truth you wanted aired." His jaw tensed. He didn't respond. Instead, he handed me a folded legal envelope. Inside, a draft of an addendum to the will. Unsigned, unwitnessed, but dated 2 weeks before my grandfather died. In it, he'd written, "I wish to leave the Bellamy ring to Nathaniel. He understands what it means to wear a name without wearing a mask." Lionel hadn't just omitted this, he'd tried to erase it. That was the inheritance no one wanted. Responsibility. The burden of knowing the truth and doing something with it. That night, I didn't return to the family estate. I went back to the locksmith's shop. I sat alone, ring in hand, and asked myself what legacy I wanted to continue, if any. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can inherit is the silence everyone agreed to protect. I thought I could leave it all behind. The name, the ring, the secrets stitched between bloodlines. But legacy is sticky. It clings in ways you don't notice until it's all over your hands, your face, your reflection. The next morning, I received a visit. Not from Lionel, not from family. From a woman in her 70s, dressed in a faded coat and holding a photograph. She waited outside the locksmith shop, unsure whether to knock. I let her in. She introduced herself as Clara, a former housemaid of the Bellamy estate. She had worked there long before I was born. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but time. "I saw the funeral in the papers," she said, placing the photograph on the counter. And the name. I recognized the ring. The photo showed a much younger version of my grandfather, standing beside a child, one that wasn't Lionel or any family member I knew. The boy wore the same ring I now carried. "That's Marcus," she whispered, "your grandfather's first son." The air left the room. "Marcus?" Clara explained. The child was born from a relationship that the family deemed improper. The child was sent away. Forgotten. The ring was meant to be his. But he died in an accident, she added, before your grandfather could bring him back. The ring returned to its velvet box, locked, preserved, a symbol of everything lost and denied. That's when I understood. The ring wasn't just about wealth. It was guilt, a reminder, a second chance never taken. And now I had it. Not the fortune, not the title, just the truth. A truth that Lionel had tried to bury, like Marcus. Clara placed her hand over mine. Whatever you do with it, she said, make sure it doesn't disappear again. Later that evening, I stood at the old family estate, staring at the portrait of my grandfather in the grand hall. I know, I whispered. I know what you did. And for once, I wasn't asking for anything. Just acknowledgement, just a reckoning. Some inherit land, some inherit wealth. I inherited silence, shattered. I stayed up all night with the ring on the table, not on my hand, not locked away, just there, between the past and what came next. I didn't know what to do with it, but I knew what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't hide it like Lionel. I wouldn't sell it like others wanted, and I wouldn't wear it like a crown I didn't earn. The next day, I called the family attorney, the same man who had guarded the vault with eyes of indifference. I asked him for access to the Bellamy archives, letters, ledgers, tapes. He hesitated, then agreed. Inside the archives, I found records of donations made under aliases, letters to Marcus never mailed, receipts for visits to a countryside hospital, visits my grandfather made alone, and a final document, unsigned, a drafted amendment to the will. It named Marcus, had he survived, as the true heir to the estate, not Lionel, not me. I sat in that dusty room for hours, the light narrowing through the blinds, and for the first time I cried, not out of grief for money lost, but for a family that never healed. I could expose it all, destroy Lionel's image, shatter the myths, and make my name known. But I didn't. Instead, I did one thing. I went to a small cemetery in the south, where Marcus was buried under a name I had never heard before. I left the ring on his grave. No camera, no speech, no closure for anyone but myself. I walked away lighter. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. Because I had finally chosen mine. I didn't inherit the Bellamy estate, but I did inherit something harder to hold, the truth. After leaving Marcus's grave, I returned to a life without boardrooms, without press, without whispers behind velvet curtains. I kept working, not in luxury finance, but in family mediation. The irony didn't escape me, but I was good at listening. Pain recognizes pain. Some weekends I spoke at schools, not about wealth, about silence. About how the most dangerous inheritance isn't money, it's avoidance. I married a teacher. We rented a modest place near a park. No crest, no vault, no secrets. We had a son. And when he asked me why our last name didn't show up in newspapers like others at his school, I told him, because some names are loud, ours just doesn't need to be anymore. I never told him everything, but I did keep one thing, the video of my grandfather, not as proof, but as reminder of what ambition cost, of what silence preserved, of how a man tried to fix too late what he broke too young. Sometimes I still dream of the mansion, of voices echoing in empty halls, but I always wake up in a house with warmth, not wealth, and that's how I know I broke the cycle. Final closing, twist and moral provocation. Years later, my son found a key in my desk, old, rusted, with the Bellamy crest. He asked me what it opened. I didn't answer, not right away. Then I said, it used to open a vault. Is there treasure inside? He asked. I looked at him, at his curiosity, at his innocence, and I told the truth. There used to be. But now the key just reminds me not to lock away the things that matter. Because legacy isn't what we leave behind, it's what we stop passing forward.